Stephen Lewis, WWE.
Oh, guys, sorry.
Stephen Lewis, WWE.
Okay, guys, that was my friend next to me. Okay, so we're gonna watch some YouTube. Try not to laugh. At least give me a couple subscribers, a couple likes, and hit that little bell down below. And make sure you turn on some notifications, guys.
Notification. Not notification.
What have you found? Who wonders?
In 2016, the 20-something Lockie McLeod and his middle-aged mate, Charlie, were out enjoying the countryside near their homes in the Glasgow area. But, as the pair admired the beauty of their surroundings, something pulled them up short. Although they could not see anything untoward on the moorland, they could certainly hear something unusual. Intrigued, the two men decided to follow the eerie sound. As they did so, their ears led them to a small jagged crack in the rough ground. And as they stood above it, the pair heard the distressing cries once more. Whatever it was that was making the unnerving noise, the sound seemed to be coming from under the earth. Consequently, Charlie got down to his knees and put his ear close to the crevice. Meanwhile, Lockie pulled out his smartphone and began to film what was unfolding. So he begins to pull tufts of grass away from the opening in order to get a better look. Realizing what his friend has seen, Lockie tells him, "You'll not get that out of there." However, the determined Charlie carries on regardless. He shouts, "Come on," to the unseen creature in an attempt to encourage his elusive quarry out of the hole. At this point, we see Charlie on all fours reaching his hand down the fissure to grab at something below ground. Carefully, he begins to prise his prize up onto the moor by the scruff of the neck. And, as he does so, Lockie's footage shows a fluffy white, albeit dirty and distressed, creature emerging from the darkness. It becomes clear that the source of the pathetic cries is a little lamb. The animal's rescuers can hardly believe what they have uncovered. And, as they eye the creature up and down, neither of the hikers can hold back hysterical laughter of disbelief. As he rises to his feet, Charlie laughingly complains that he is covered in excrement for his troubles. The lamb finally finds its feet. The newborn stands up and starts edging its way towards the waiting sheep. As far as we know, the lamb is fine and...
Alright, guys, please subscribe to Stephen Lewis's.
About becoming the old cat lady who's going to end up being eaten by those little fur devils. There have been many cases throughout history of people who have owned pets that have gone on to kill them and eat them. Sometimes they didn't even
Please subscribe to Stephen Lewis's videos.
Dead before nibbling on their rotting bodies.
And
so join us as we have a look
subscribe to him and hit the little bell and other things like that.
Ravenous pugs. Pugs! The dogs that are so ugly that they're absolutely beautiful. But don't feel too much pity for the world's most popular
dogs are
inbred
cute,
house
guys.
pet. That's because when things get tough, they will do anything to survive. Anyone out there who owns a pug knows that there are a few things they won't eat, and human flesh is not really one of them. Once upon a time in Nebraska, two pugs who were named Harry and Sally were happily living a life of seclusion with their owner. That is, until the 51-year-old man committed suicide by putting a shotgun to his face and blowing himself away. Before he killed himself, it seems that he forgot to let his neighbors know that his dogs would need to be fed while he was gone. Harry and Sally would finish the little bit of food they had left in their bowl and began to starve over the next few days. Eventually, they had no choice but to begin snacking on the viscera of their deceased owner. They began with the ribbons of flesh hanging off the sides of his face, and then used his partially obliterated skull as a bowl and began to snack on his exposed brain. Eventually, after their owner had not been heard from in a few days, people became concerned and went to the house, and what they found was terrifying. The body of a man with his head partially gnawed off, and 2 smiling pugs that were happy to see someone that might give them a few treats for taking care of the house. Fortunately enough, the pugs faced no repercussions for gnawing on their owner, and were later even given a new delicious set of owners to live with. Despite the morbid nature of this case, you can't help but think the movie about inbred cannibal dogs
That's just weird, guys.
would be Oscar-worthy.
That's just not dumb.
Cynthia Lee Gamble operated the Center for Endangered Cats, a sanctuary that held all sorts of endangered cat species.
He's annoying. Don't listen to that, please.
Ocelots, and most
He's
importantly,
really
tigers.
annoying.
Cynthia was an expert on leopard behavior, but considered herself generally knowledgeable on all species
He's
of jungle
annoying.
cats. She even often took the endangered cats for showings around the world to inform people about their becoming extinct. There were many times that she would bring the animals out on a leash with no protection whatsoever.
like and subscribe.
After all the personal time she'd spent with the animals,
please.
there's no way she would have ever believed that one of them would eventually turn on her, right? Well, one day while she was working in her Minnesota sanctuary, she accidentally left one of the trap doors open to the cage of a Bengal tiger. These doors are usually used as an alternative means of escape for humans, but this time the wily tiger decided to make the attempt to squeeze through. He ended up being successful in his endeavor and eventually tracked down the unsuspecting Cynthia Lee Gamble, tearing her to shreds. Some people may think that this is an isolated incident, but apparently the community had petitioned the center due to numerous transgressions. Oh, and apparently cats had escaped before. And in one case, one of Gamble's friends had been bitten. Sometimes it's just best if we leave nature to itself. Pet pythons. We should all have learned
I
two
like
important
snakes,
things
guys.
from watching the movie Anaconda. Number 1, Ice Cube cannot act. And number 2, snakes might be the scariest creatures in the world and should never be kept as pets. While apparently there was one Florida family out there who never learned these valuable lessons. In 2011, a 2-year-old girl by the name of Shanae Hare was killed by her family's illegal pet python. The snake had a horribly inconsistent
crazy,
diet
guys.
of occasional roadkill brought in by the owners, along with whatever it could find to eat when it escaped its 150-gallon aquarium. The 8.5-foot monster had escaped a total of 10 times prior to eating the young girl, but had never once harmed a human being during those times. Now, we're guessing that the snake finally got fed up with not being fed and decided to take its anger out on its owners. It escaped through the quilt top that covered its aquarium and made its way to Shanae's room. That's when it struck her once to grab hold and then began to slowly squeeze the life out of her. When the snake was found, it was apparently half of what was considered a healthy weight for a python of its age. The parents faced charges of manslaughter and animal abuse because the snake was illegal under federal and state law. Travis the chimpanzee. Now you've
Guys,
likely
that's
heard
just
about this
crazy.
story because it became international news in 2009, and we've also spoken about it here on the channel. Travis the chimp was a famous animal actor that was seen on The Man Show and The Maury Povich Show in the years prior to the event. The 200-pound chimp was raised and socialized in a couple's Stamford, Connecticut home for well over 13 years. Travis was known to be generally friendly, often shaking hands with police officers and being seen bringing small gifts to people that he would meet. The owners would use him as a model of their towing company, and to the public, Travis was as friendly as the monkey from Aladdin. But what many people didn't really know is that there were 2 instances where Travis had a few physical outbursts towards people. However, those events would be kept under wraps. Something that would literally come back to bite Charla Nash in 2009. One day, Travis would get out of the house with one of the owner's keys and attempted to carjack them. The elderly owners weren't able to wrangle the monkey themselves, so that's when they called their friend Charla Nash over to help. When she arrived,
I
she
never
went
knew a
outside
monkey would
with
do
one
that.
of Travis's toys. When Travis spotted Nash with his toy, he darted towards her in a rage and began to savagely beat and maul her as the owners attempted to pull him off.
Whoa.
After a few moments with no success, one of the owners would fetch a butcher knife and begin to stab Travis. He would barely be fazed by their attacks, and that's when they would call the police, who initially thought that they were being pranked until they heard someone screaming in the background that Travis was eating her. They rushed to the scene and shot Travis several times before he ran away to his cage, where he laid down and soon died. Charlotte Nash would survive the attack, but her face was severely disfigured. The owners admitted to giving Travis some Xanax-laced tea earlier in the day to help him calm down. But what they didn't know is that Xanax can actually have an opposite effect and induce rage and vivid hallucinations with certain individuals. And it's believed that Travis
Yeah, please subscribe to
suffered
Gamer
the
Games,
same
and
plight.
yeah.
Humphrey the Hippo. A South American farmer by the name of Maurice Els was known for raising some exotic animals on his estate.
And
One of those
subscribe
animals was a
to
hippopotamus
Stephen
named
Lewis.
Humphrey.
And
Maurice
subscribe
owned the
to me
hippo
so
since
you
it
can
was
get
a mere
some,
5
so you can
months
get
old,
either win
and
2 golden
many people
fidget
who
spinners
knew him described
or
the
a
hippo
regular
as the
fidget
son that Maurice never had.
Subscribe.
In fact, the pair were so
Comment.
close that Maurice was often pictured riding on Humphrey's back through the farmlands. Needless to say, it was a major surprise to everyone when Humphrey turned on his longtime best friend. With the exception of this event, Humphrey had only had one other violent interaction with human beings. On that occasion, a canoe of
Subscribe to the
people
free
who were
team.
not familiar with Humphrey was floating into his territory, so he rushed them, but no one was actually harmed. This would not be the case with Maurice, and in November of 2011, it was reported that Maurice was out on the land visiting Humphrey when he was suddenly attacked by him. Humphrey chomped down on Maurice and dragged him underwater for minutes at a time. He would continue this attack until Maurice was motionless, his body having numerous puncture wounds. And it's assumed that Maurice went out to feed his friend, but instead, he found Humphrey to be a hangry hippo. Herbert and Jane Walden. Herbert and Jane were a mother and son combination who lived with each other in northwestern Pennsylvania. Jane was 94 years old and unable to take care of herself. So, like any good son, 74-year-old Herbert would take the responsibility. The house was in shambles. Garbage was piled high all over the place, and it was soon overrun with every manner of wildlife, mainly cats. There ended up being no running water in the house, so Herbert and Jane had been relieving themselves in numerous buckets that lay around. One day, Herbert had a heart attack and passed away. Jane was left with no one to take care of her, nor did she have any kind of means of contacting the outside world. Most people just assumed that a house in that condition was abandoned, so there was no bother in calling the police. The cats who usually fed on the scraps that the Waldens left behind no longer had a source of food, so you can kind of see where this is going. After the cats were finished with Herbert, they then turned on Jane. Hog wild. Coos County was most famously known for its legendary track and field athlete Steve Prefontaine. That was until the Bay Area town gained a group of murderous pigs. A local farmer by the name of Terry Vance Garner had been raising some abnormally large pigs for quite a few years, and it's reported that one of the larger pigs actually weighed over 700 pounds. And if you don't know anything about pigs, that's actually twice the size of a normal swine. One night, Terry walked out the door and
This is
told
crazy,
his
guys.
wife that he was going to feed the pigs, and he'd be back in just a few moments. A few hours later, he still hadn't returned. That's when his wife would set out to look for him on the farm, but couldn't find him, so she called the police. As the police would conduct their search, they found Terry's glasses, and then they found pieces of his body in the pig enclosure. As it turns out, the farmer Garner had experienced a fatal heart attack and died within the enclosure. The pigs? Well, they recognized that his motionless body was obviously their food and went on to consume it. The non-consensual camel.
Camels.
This might be one of the strangest stories of a pet animal that killed their owner. A group of ranchers in Brisbane, Australia owned a few camels. One of them was particularly touchy, and by touchy, we mean that he liked to straddle and hump his owners. On one occasion, this amorous camel ambushed his owner and humped her to death, and had a few nibbles while he was at it. The husband would find his wife's violated corpse and knew immediately what had transpired. This has been a look at just a few occasions where pet animals have eaten their owners. But what do you know about?
Guys, alright, that's the end of the video. Please subscribe to my channel and subscribe to Goomer Games. Opaxian, UFO Pack 10, whatever, and Stephen Lewis. Alright, guys, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Alright, guys, that's the end of the video. Bye.